How many of you have ever wondered if God actually exists? And perhaps you have had your spiritual awakening and you realize that you were connected to a divine force, or what I used to call it, the grand mystery. But every single time that you try to name it God, there is a huge resistance, and whether it is your old religious wounds, they start coming up, or old blockages start coming up, and you simply resist it to name it for what it is. Now, in today's episode of the first transmission, we're gonna be talking about how there is no universe, there is only God, and why so many of you have struggled to understand the concept of what God really is. Because there is old wounds, there is old connections with religion that every single time that you try to name it, you literally feel a blockage, and it doesn't let you to truly connect with that divine force that is ever present and ever giving. Now, today is not only about understanding God, but it's also comprehending how this divine force, how the architect that has created everything, is literally shaping absolutely everything in your life. And the moment that you allow yourself to simply reconnect, to build a bridge between you and the Creator, you will be able to change and transform your lives in ways that you couldn't possibly ever imagine. Now, a few years back, actually, many years back, I remember when I grew up and I was forced into Catholicism, I never actually connected to it. I was literally forced. When I did my communion, when I did all the different processes that you have to do it through the Catholic religion, my parents were literally paying the priest so that I can get the certificate. So I never actually connected. And then as I grew older, I remember once I started asking myself, maybe there is a bigger force. Maybe there is something else that I haven't tapped into. So I became curious, and Christianity came into my life. And I remember I ended up in a church in United States where people were channeling through God, and God was speaking directly to me. And I thought I have found it, until the moment that they tried to change me just because of my sexuality. And that's when I questioned, and I said, if God was ever giving and loving, why will they try to change me just because of my sexuality? So eventually I decided to let it go. And I came across Hinduism, Buddhism, I came across the Krishna community, but it was always the same. I found that every single time that I tried to lean in religion, I was being doctrinated. I was being told the ways that I had to believe, the ways that I have to be, and I couldn't really connect. And in my spiritual awakening, 5 years ago, when I decided to start my journey with plant medicine, ayahuasca, San Pedro, I come from Ecuador. So I literally went back home from Australia to Ecuador to start my journey with plant medicine, and it changed my life. It made me even realize that I was connected to something greater. And since then, I decided to call the divine mystery, the grandfather. I gave it so many names. But yet I resisted to see God as what it was. 1 year ago, things completely changed, and they radically changed, because I decided to go all in something that I always had resistance for. I knew that I have had my spiritual awakening, that I have changed my career path, that I have tapped into my mission and my purpose. And there was one fundamental piece that was missing in my life. And I don't know what happens. I don't know if when you turn 30, these things actually start happening. But I had the need of connecting with something greater than myself. And I said, God, if you are there, simply show me how to pray. And he ended up showing me how to pray in a fitness class. Right? Nonsense. So then I decided to tap even deeper and to start even asking deeper questions. I started to say, God, simply show me the way. Show me the path. And I started connecting with new people. I ended up in a retreat, 7 days in Bali, absolutely for free, where I was literally shown how to connect with God and the divine. So that changed my journey completely. But what is the most interesting part of it is that 5 years ago, I was able to connect with alchemy, with Kabbalah and Hermetism. And you will be wondering, but how this is all connected? But at the end of this episode, I'm going to be giving you a short framework that is going to allow you to understand deeper how you can build this connection, how you can finally be able to even name God, because that's the only piece that probably is missing in your life that is gonna change absolutely everything. Now, as I was connecting with God, I realized that there was another thing that I wasn't aware before. And probably you are going through, but you don't want to name it. Because being spiritual is easy. Being spiritual doesn't give you any depth into what you do, because you can have many spiritual practices. You can nowadays simply wear your garments and you feel like you are a better person. You feel like now you have the right to teach others, to guide others, just because you say that you are spiritual. But underlying the fact that, yes, you have discovered something greater, there is also the fact that you are very, very terrified of connecting something that will require you to become the disciple of your own life and of your own self. And let it sit. Deeply in your heart, you are very afraid of connecting with God because that will require you to become someone humble and to become someone that actually follows instructions. Now, to go even deeper, I want to explain a few different perspectives from Hermeticism and why tapping within this consciousness with what I call the divine laws had really allowed me to work with God and the divine in ways that I couldn't possibly imagine. In 1 year, my life completely, radically changed. I have been led to new opportunities, led to new ways of working, led to even do this. And I couldn't even do it before because I simply didn't have the strength. I simply didn't even know how to tap within that divine force so that I can be the channel. Now, in Hermetism, basically what we learn is that God is not a deity that is just there in the sky, but God, it is an architecture that is ever present in absolutely everything around us in what we call reality. Now, what Hermetism says is like basically God, the all, is not that fixed structure, but that He's absolutely ever present in everything that we do. And if He's ever present in the context of reality, He's also ever present in our lives. Because we can see it as God simply being the one that is experiencing reality through our own eyes. So if we are part of God and God is part of us, in the same way that God has created reality, we also have the capacity to shapeshift and create our reality. And here is where things get even more interesting. This profound realization literally shifts the concept of the ruler that needs to be worshipped into a living system that can be realized. And when I saw this map unfolding into my life, when I told you that 5 years ago I came across alchemy, I came across Hermeticism, the Kabbalah, I couldn't really grasp it because back then what I used to do, I used to be very in love of the rituals. So I used to do all these external rituals, placing my power externally, waiting for the external reality to simply affirm the worth or the connection that I was seeking. But a year ago, these concepts came back. And they came back as principles of like, when you think about the Bible, right? And when you think about Catholicism, they believe in it so much that they literally follow the principles. Not everybody does, and that's why we know that the world is a little bit fucked. But when you think about it, if you have given a framework, if you have given the divine laws in which absolutely everything is present, then we literally have the codes and we have the mathematical formula of how we can decode reality and understand God, how He operates, and in a way, how you can become the channel. And by being the channel, you can become the vessel for His miracles, for all the things that He's very willing to give it to you. Once you allow to truly connect, once you allow for you to be the disciple. And as I said, it's not being His disciple. It's about being the disciple of your own life. Now, the second point that I want to talk is God as immanence and transcendence. Like when we understand that the Logos is ever created by this force, by this architecture, we can understand that the universe happens through the divine. That is why, for example, in the Bible, it says that God created everything in 7 days. And in the next following transmissions, you will understand how 7 is interconnected to absolutely everything, and how God is literally speaking us through the number 7. But that's for another day. Now, another aspect that we understand in Hermeticism is cosmic harmony. Because Hermeticism basically says that Since the universe is interpreted in absolutely everything, there is a cosmic harmony that is created, that is ever present in absolutely everything in our lives. Now, one of my favorite parts is one of the axioms or one of the principles, as above, so below. And in Hermeticism, this explains that basically we have the macrocosm, which is the universe, and we have the microcosm, which is our mind. Therefore, since as above, so below, as the universe, so our mind, everything is linked and interconnected. And whatever you are experiencing right now is simply that expression flowing through the divine and through your own mind, simply reflecting back at you what you have created. Now remember that many people probably have heard about this concept of like you are the creator. You are the creator of your own reality. This concept simply explains why we are constantly creating absolutely everything. Now remember that I said that I was going to be bringing you a framework, a way of understanding and connecting deeper with the divine. Now the whole objective of this podcast was for you to be able to understand and to have the realization that you are not disconnected from the divine. But I want to give you a framework today, something that radically changed my life and the way that I literally saw God, that I told you from the very beginning. I literally asked God to teach me how to pray. Because once we move from the religion into the realization, once we understand that praying, it was never about how we were told that we need to pray for, getting a new house, getting a new car, getting that new relationship. But once we understand that through praying, we can become the realization that we are not separated from God, but rather we are one within. And that instead of asking God for material things, what we need to ask is for God to make us the vessel that can have the capacity to hold such gifts. Now, many of you probably have been praying, and perhaps you left it, you let it go because there was this resistance made through religion. Or perhaps you have been doing your entire life, but you feel very, very disconnected from it. Now, this framework, what I'm going to be teaching you, which is exactly how I pray, is going to allow you to become the vessel. But be aware that the moment that you start doing it, your life is going to radically change. And you must be willing to let go absolutely everything from who you think you are, from what you think you have achieved. Because once God comes in, He becomes the architect, and you simply walk the path guided, knowing and trusting that He is doing absolutely everything in the best way so that you can be open to those miracles. Now, the way that you're going to be doing this is every single morning, as soon as you wake up, you don't grab your phone, you don't do anything else, then just simply allow yourself to come back from the ether, from the dream state, back into reality. And in those moments, the first moments, there is something that we're going to be learning over the next transmissions that is going to help you materialize all your dreams. But straight after that, what you're going to do is you're going to give yourself 3 to 5 minutes to simply connect with the divine. And usually the way that I start my prayers and how He has been showing me is that I simply start being grateful of everything that I have received, of everything that I have been experiencing, whether it's having a bed, having a house, having food to eat. You simply start by being grateful for what you are genuinely grateful for, what God has given to you. And straight after we moved into the challenges, we simply started explaining Him, okay, this is happening with my business, this is happening in my life, these are the challenges that I am facing, and I really need to understand the wisdom, the clarity, the resilience that you might be needing at that point. So then you start simply asking for God to simply make you the vessel that can hold the capacity of the dreams that God has given to you. Because you wouldn't have such big dreams if God didn't know that you had the capacity to make them a reality. And straight after that, once you have asked God to be the vessel, the last thing that you're going to ask is, God, simply show me what my soul requires from me today. And from there, you're going to move. And from there, you're going to move in your day in a more intentional way. And as I said, simply trust and allow the magic to unfold. Because the moment that you allow yourself to truly connect with this higher force, the moment that you allow yourself to go into prayer as if it was something that your soul need to be fed every single day, your life is going to radically change. The way that you connect with God, not with the universe, but genuinely with God, is gonna change in ways that you couldn't possibly imagine. And you feel like you were never connected to religion, if you feel like you always wanted to learn about these concepts, but you simply didn't know what to do, simply come back into my transmissions, where I will be guiding you towards the journey of reconnecting yourself with your divine essence, and through connecting with your divine essence, you will connect with the divine. And we are gonna be building a bridge so that you can have and receive and become the vessel to be open for the miracles that God has already been granting to you. And before we go, I simply want to leave you with one reflection and ask yourself how your resistance with God and the divine is actually affecting and costing in other people's lives. Because if you realize that you have a mission, if you realize that you have a deeper purpose, you avoiding having this connection, you being afraid of God, of what might happen once you have to become the disciple, might not only be affecting you, but the hundreds and thousands of people that you came here to awaken and to help and to serve. So it was a pleasure to have you with me today, and I welcome you to this channel, Transmissions by Aeon, where we will be discussing deeper aspects of how this spiritual technology was left to us, so that we can create, we can expand, and we can become one with the divine. See you in the next chapter.